Go ahead.
So, I am Joshua Joe. I created a video game that was intended to teach calculus. I named my company Gnome. So, who am I? The first time I answered this question, I was like, this is going to be more difficult than my actual senior project. You can't just research on the next database and figure out who are you. But after filling out college applications, I could probably talk for hours and make fun of myself. So this should be fine. Probably the best way to explain who I am in a memorable fashion would be an anecdote of a weird thing I've done. So one time somebody cut me in line, in the lunch line, and it was extremely horrific. Everybody behind me was also cut by them as well. So when I went home, I wrote a sonnet made them the subject of it, a very scathing sonnet about them. But after I was done with that, I wasn't mad at them anymore because writing is pretty good focus of mine. Stuff that I enjoy that's important to me. I'm an academic nerd, so I spend most of my time doing schoolwork and homework. I also enjoy computer science and comedy. I'm probably going to get a degree in computer science and maybe have a side job with comedy if I wanted to, if I got around to it. I also play board and card games. My favorite board game is Catan, which you can see right here. I have all of the extensions of Catan, but the first two are unopened because, like I said, I spend most of my time doing schoolwork. So this is my resume. It feels a little bit awkward to say my accomplishments because I work hard more so that I know I'm awesome instead of that other people will know I'm awesome. But because I'm an academic nerd, I've taken a lot of difficult classes and gotten A's. I got the Rensselaer Medal Award, and I spent really little time on more formal after-school activities, so I figured I would get microcredits to try to recompense for that. My logo for my presentation is right here. You've seen it before. I wanted to combine scientific and intelligent with fun and exciting because math is usually thought of as something that's more intelligent and it can't be fun, but I'm trying to make it fun with this game, which is why I wanted my theme throughout the presentation and the logo to kind of include both of those. So the name of it is Gnome. It is pronounced like neon in the middle because neon makes you think color, it makes you think light, it kind of makes you think new and exciting. And then cis is at the end of a bunch of scientific words, so that's why I added that part. And I also wanted people to feel really fulfilled when they were able to correctly say the name, like, I just pronounced Gnome correctly. The font size, I did something that looked kind of futuristic because space technology is typically super advanced and yet still interesting, which I think fits in well with the theme. For the color, I did green because that has to do with coding. A lot of black on green and green on black because usually you think of a bunch of ones and zeros that are in front of a black screen. Then for the math symbols, it goes from gray to yellow and orange, which kind of represents creativity and energy and happiness, and so I'm turning the boring math into that instead. And the machine is, of course, kind of turning it into that image of I'm changing the boring into something else. The inspiration for my project was that I was in calculus BC last year, Some people may think that calculus was boring. I, of course, can't admit to that because it's my favorite subject and I'm a nerd, but I think it would be helpful for a lot of people if I were to make it into a game because there's a lot of first through fifth grade math things that are turned into games, but it doesn't really go much above that. So I have also been programming for the last 6 years or since middle school. I have really enjoyed it because it's fulfilling and it allows me to be creative and think of solutions to problems. Godot covers the weaknesses of a lot of languages I've learned, such as Scratch in middle school and then Python and Java in high school when I took AP Computer Science Principles and AP Computer Science A. So the objectives of my project were that I wanted to be able to learn Godot so that I could program a complex game in 2D graphics. I wanted to look at how I could ask the program for input with arrow keys and stuff because I thought that might be harder than it was. And then I wanted it to be able to interpret that input and react to it appropriately. So I also wanted to fortify my knowledge of calculus BC because I took that last year during Corona, so I think I might have forgotten some stuff. I wanted to create a professional portfolio, and I wanted to create a memorable experience. It was a lot of fun doing this project, so I would say it was very memorable. My timeline started like this, and then it turns out I can't tell the future, so I crossed out some of the objectives that would make the game more like detailed and aesthetic and stuff. Like I took away the program, the title screen of the game and the characters so that I would just have the level in the calculus to get straight to the more important framework of the game. This is what my timeline ended up looking at the end when I took that stuff out. So, the research for my project. The first thing I researched is it called Godot or Godot? I figured out that it is called Godot after the play Waiting for Godot because they're like, oh, everybody's been waiting for this perfect language this whole time and we just fulfilled their desires. And obviously we all know that hard to pronounce names mean it's the best company. So. First, I researched the basics of Godot, which are nodes and script. Godot is a Python-based language, so if you know Python, you can do most of the script, but it also has a bunch of nodes which you arrange into trees. The nodes can each do an individual thing. For example, you might have a sprite node that, like Peanut Appearance is the name of that sprite node, that chooses how the character looks and it can make it go between different pictures to form animation. You have the collision shake node, which detects when it's colliding with an object so that it can stop instead of going forward. And a bunch of different other nodes that all have their own individual functions. So it uses the scripts that interact with the nodes to make a language that is really easy to program in. So this is my very first phase of the project. We have a demon elephant or something here. I was able to make the character jump. I was able to make the character collide with the ceilings and the floors without falling into them like normal physics wants it to. I fixed a hitbox glitch, which you can see here, where it sometimes falls through the blocks. Basically, it was flipping the image around, but it wasn't changing the position of the hitbox, so when it was turning a certain direction, it thought the hitbox was somewhere where it shouldn't be. I then wanted to find a place where I could draw the elephant, so I researched between GIMP and Krita, which are two different softwares, and I figured out that Krita would be more useful, and I was able to use that to animate the elephant, and as I spent more time with that, its animation improved. So this is my next phase of the project. I made it so that when the elephant gets moving, instead of just going straight to the velocity and staying there, it takes a second before it accelerates, because that's how physics works, is you can't instantly go to a certain speed, and that makes it look a lot better. I also put a bunch of different physics in the air than on the ground. For example, it slows down nearly instantly on the ground, whereas if it slows down in the air, then it takes a little bit. It also doesn't slow down as you're holding onto the arrow key in the air, because it is continually accelerating towards that maximum and never going above or under it. So that makes it so that you can hold down the right arrow key for longer periods of time and it will jump farther, or shorter periods of time, and then the air friction will catch up with it and it will go slower. One of the problems that I had with this is I was trying to make a magic door, is what I call the thing at the top of the level that transfers the elephant to the next level. I wanted it to be easily scalable so that I could make the magic door once and then just copy and paste it, maybe with a slight edit between each level, but this ran into a problem because when I stored it as a scene, which is basically the easiest way to copy and paste it, it was hard to have a different level. Like I would copy and paste it and then it would take it to the second level, and then it would finish the second level and go back to the second level, which I did not want. So I figured out there was a thing called export where you can export a string or a variable of any kind and change it from the drop-down menu. So I could use that drop-down menu to change the name of each individual level so that it would ask the door the name of the next level, and then the elephant would go to that level. So this is another version of the game. Here I worked with the camera 2D node and parallax backgrounds to make the background move better with the player, for example, or even the foreground moves because of the camera. That affects what you can see on the screen. So instead of having a level that's only the size of the screen, I can have a level that's a lot bigger. You can see this level is gigantuan in comparison to the other ones. And then the background moves along with the player, except slower, so that it looks like it's far away, and it adds a 3D element to the game. You can see that a lot easier when we get higher up and we have some swirly wave things that will move left and right slower than the player. I also added a different area of a different gravity here, which allows me to separate the different parts of the level. Yeah. So some may say that I haven't discussed the calculus part of the game yet, which I said this whole game is to teach calculus, so you could call that the elephant in the room. So I will now explain the elephant in the room in farther detail. So we have the autobiography of the elephant in the room. Just kidding, that's not what you wanted. So the elephant I gave the elephant the ability to pick up blocks near the very end of my project. I wasn't able to do a ton of calculus stuff like I would have wanted you to type in answers, but I did have time so that it checks the block that was put in the hole, and if it is the correct block, then it brings the character to the next level. If it is the incorrect block, then it doesn't. You can see more of that by coming to my station. So, some of the research I did for that is I needed to communicate a lot between the elephant and blocks so that the block could go to the same position of the elephant, because you can see that the block is following the elephant around, and that ended up being very difficult because I didn't know I could use signals to send variables, but once I figured that out, I was able to send the X and Y position of the elephant to tell the block where to go. So some of my problems, challenges, were that I didn't expect there to be so many, like the journals to take so long. Those took like about 1/3 of my time, so I might have made more progress in my project if I weren't doing those. I also coincidentally had a lot of bloody noses throughout those journals, so that wasn't fun. You can't see my face very well in this picture, so that's better. Debugging, of course, took a while. For example, right here, I thought that I needed to send a signal to all 4 blocks when I copied and pasted the block, and I thought it would copy and paste sending the signal to the block as well, so that took forever to figure out that was happening. And then also this last week was very difficult because I spent a lot of time on stuff, and I needed to create a presentation and a trifold and a 104-page journal, which wasn't super fun. Felt like that. So my advisory, I have Mike Hudson and Jeremiah Joe. Mike Hudson is a friend of my dad. He doesn't know Godot, but I couldn't find an advisor who did, so I just got someone who could program. Jeremiah Job is my uncle, and I talked to him later and figured out that he does know Godot, but not to the extent that I might have wanted, but he was still able to help me with the project. My support advisors were my parents, who helped to grammatically check stuff and make sure everything was professional. And then also I asked Hiram Joe, my twin brother, and my friend Adrian Richens to be my support advisors. This is Hiram on the left and me on the right. He is supporting me. Maybe. Not sure why I chose him, actually. And here's my bibliography. Questions?
I was really confused, Josh, when you were talking about calculus being boring. That wasn't for you personally.
I don't think calculus is boring, but I think other people might. So.
Oh.
I don't know.
No one.
Calculus is awesome.
Certainly not.
Yes. Do you plan on continuing your project in the future?
I really
Yeah, I probably will continue it in my free time, if I can find free time. But it was really fun and really fulfilling, so I wouldn't want to let all of that go when I know I can continue it on my own time. Yeah.
Where would the practical application of the project be? So could it be potentially like used in classrooms?
It could probably be used, I guess, if students wanted to study calculus over summer vacation, because I'm planning on giving it a big storyline that might not be very good in classrooms, but I'm sure teachers could like assign students to work on it or something like that. Yes?
How did you choose the elephant to be the character?
So One reason is that I have a stuffed animal elephant who when I started in Scratch in middle school, I made that the main character of my game, and so I was like, oh, I'll just continue that today. And then the second one is it's kind of ironic because it's a platformer and elephants cannot jump, or at least cannot jump very well. And I was planning on eventually adding a comedic aspect to the game, so I figured that would be good for that respect, and also make fun of the fact that Mario shouldn't be able to jump as much as he does either.
Would you like to be a game designer in the future?
I might want to be a game designer. I am still exploring all of the different aspects of programming, so I'm really not sure which one I would like to do yet.
Why did you choose Godot as your programming software?
So I chose Godot because Jeremiah Job, who's my uncle, suggested it to me. I was at first going to do Game Maker, but he said that he had had a better experience with Godot, and it was really useful because, like I said, it's Node to Python-based script interface makes it really easy to get everything done without repeating yourself a ton. Yes?
What would you say your biggest problem upon the game was?
So I guess I had a few problems, and most of them weren't equally as big. I guess since I was sort of rushing adding the blocks to it at the end, it was really annoying that I had both the problem where the signals were communicating with only one block, and the problem where I guess the block was acting as a ceiling for the character and other stuff like that. Or I guess the thing that made that really hard was when I was tracing the code, it looked as if it was suddenly changing from one thing to one other thing because I traced it all the way to the point and it stayed the same. There was nothing that I could do to change the variable. So I was like, this variable must be changing, but it turned out it hadn't even changed the signal, which I guess I wasn't used to because Python and Java don't include signals really. Yes?
What was an award you got for that they showed beginning?
Rensselaer's Award,
Yeah.
I think, is for excellence in science and mathematics.